Hello, and welcome to the Hive Mind podcast, where the collective wisdom of the travel industry helps you match travelers with the right destinations and the right hotels. I'm your host, Whitney Schindler, founder and CEO of The Hive, a platform designed to give travel advisors organized, actionable insights they can put to work right away. Each week, I sit down for focused, real-world conversations with travel advisors, hoteliers, and supplier partners who know these places inside and out. We break down how each hotel is best suited to a specific client profile, take quick deep dives into destinations, and share pro tips to help you make the most of the Hive. And here's the best part. You don't need to take notes while you listen. Go about your day, tune in, and know that every insight from these conversations is already captured and organized inside the Hive, so it's there when you actually need it. And if you aren't on the Hive yet, you can get resources from this and other episodes when you join our newsletter at thehive.travel/podcast. Today, we have a new episode of The Essentials, a deep dive all about helping you not just understand a destination, but feel it, the energy, the vibe, and the nuance that makes it unique. Trusted destination partners share key details that matter most and help paint an overall picture that will inspire you as you present this destination to clients. When you bring a destination to life with confidence and clarity, you build trust, you spark excitement, and you make it that much easier for your clients to say yes. Joining us today to talk about the Dolomites in northern Italy is Karen Hattaway, founder of Life Beyond the Room. Let's dive in. Hello, Karen. Hi, how are you? Welcome to the podcast.
I'm good. Thank you, Whitney. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited. First of all, excuse my scratchy voice, but here we go. I'm so excited to talk all about the Dolomites today. This is a region of Italy that I think is becoming more and more popular. And I only say that because more and more clients are coming with that in mind before they reach out, which I think is a testament to it just becoming more well known as a region. Has that been your experience as well?
Absolutely, 100%. 3, 4 years ago, it was just a kind of sort of a minor destination compared to its northern neighborhood. And now, the last 2 years, I would say, it's really exploded. And you're right, we're getting more and more requests for the Dolomites. And it's so important. I'm so glad that we're talking about this topic because the logistics of this region and the weather are very different than some of the other regions where you can just go almost any time of year, right, and be pretty safe. And so I'm really excited to dive into this region with you.
So the Dolomites has two very distinct seasons. Talk to me about the best time to be there for kind of summer activities versus winter activities. And then I imagine there's a few months in there that are kind of a weird in between that might actually be better to avoid.
Yes, absolutely. So in terms of summer, of course, the Dolomites is so vast that it all depends on where you go, right? And the more known kind of touristy towns like Cortina and Ortisei versus some of the lesser known valleys like maybe Alta, Badia, or Fassa. But I would say a good like pre-busy season month in the summer would be like towards the end of June because it's now
Mhm.
warm enough. Obviously, it's not really hot like it is in other parts of Italy. So obviously you can still enjoying all the hiking. But that season, it's really great pre-crowds because July and August, this is where all of the Italians kind of escape the summer heat of wherever they live,
Okay.
and they escape to the Dolomites. So early June, it's not bad, but the weather could be a little bit more risky. I was there
Okay.
both in early June and middle of June. And of course, if you get closer to the end of June, you're a little bit safer. Best to avoid July and August, although I know a lot of people, have to consider kids' school. And so it's
Mhm.
not a bad season to travel. There's just a lot more people and prices, are, of course, the highest during that time.
Sure. So if clients are looking for those summer activities, like if they're wanting to hike, late June is a very small window. July and August is busy. Is September still a nice time to be there?
Absolutely. No, that's a great point. Yes, so the second week of September, because the first week, so in Italy, kids go back to school about September 12th, 13th. It's always around my
Okay.
birthday. So that second week of September is actually really beautiful. And weather-wise, it's going to be very similar to that middle to late June. So that's also a really safe week to play about. Of course, it's, a little bit cooler. But that's a really, really great time to go. And even early September, most people would have already come back to kind of get ready to go back to school. So yeah, and in mid-September too, you get something really cool. And this doesn't happen as much in like the busy towns like Cortina, but some of the other towns that are a lot less touristy and there's a lot of like real authentic farming activity. They have this experience in Italian we call the transumanza, which is happens right in the middle of September, and it's when the cows come down from the mountains for the for the summer, and they open up. A lot of farms will open up their doors to kind of share food and their crops with guests. And this is a lot of people that do not work year round with tourism. So whenever we're able to incorporate such an experience, it's so authentic and so appreciated by the clients.
Oh, that's really cool. And you said that's happening in the middle of September?
Yeah, it's usually right in the
Cool.
middle of September. Yeah, and then there's
Cool.
this day right around that time too where there's scary monsters, like people dressed up as monsters that go around the villages just to scare the kids. So really cool, like cultural festivities and festivals like that don't happen right in the middle of summer.
Cool. Okay, so when does like the snow arrive and the, like the nice winter season? When, if clients want a winter experience in the Dolomites, what months should we be looking at?
Yep. So just to kind of close the fall window, in late September, you could potentially get snow. And in fact, we
Okay.
had a group, last year, right around that last week of September. It was warm some days and then it started snowing some other. And of course, if people are hiking, also the intention behind the trip is very important. That's something to keep in mind when you go at high elevation. But in terms of winter, so keeping in mind that October is a super risky month because of rain, starts to ice, right? If it rains and it's cold, there's ice on the road. November, a lot of hotels actually close. And then the winter season really starts in December, like pre-Christmas holidays, which is not the
Okay.
best time to go unless people are planning, well over a year in advance and they really want to make this a Christmas experience. Between, a week before Christmas all the way up until January 6th, which is actually our Epiphany. It's what we call a Befana, like the witch that brings the sweets or the charcoal in the stockings. We don't do that together with Christmas. It's very busy. And then again, January 7th, it empties out. So if somebody's looking to travel in January, which with the snow activities, this year there's no snow. Even for the Olympics, we're a little bit in trouble. Those are happening in February, but some years, middle of January, it's really great for snow, but otherwise also February and March are usually the safest times if you have, people that are really into skiing. So
Sure.
keeping in mind the week after January 6th, it really empties out. So if somebody has to go in January, that would be a really good week to get great prices and less crowds. And then again, for, skiing anytime from that time all the way to early March would be
Okay.
safe. April is the other risky month, like April, October, November is when a lot of the hotels close. Most hotels were only closed for a month or two out of the year. And those are usually the season because of the rain and ice.
Okay. While we're on the winter topic, if you're wanting a snowy, wintry Dolomites experience, but you do not ski, does that make any sense?
Oh,
Are
absolutely.
there other things for you to do?
Yes, absolutely. And in fact, this is a perfect time because I just returned from a family trip where half of my family skied, and myself, my mom, my mother-in-law didn't ski. The beautiful thing about the Dolomites, especially if you stayed in one of the really authentic villages, is that there's so many things to do, from like farm activities to cooking class. I know we're going to be talking about this, but like the food and wine and liquor, quote unquote, like grappa scene, it's really
Hmm.
huge. For kids, people can go to snow parks, and we went snow sledding with our kids. You can also like do a lot of things with cheese, which is another big product from the area. You can go up to a farm and milk cows and learn all about that cheese making process.
Hmm.
Um, in some of the towns where the wood making tradition is still popular, you can do like wood carving workshops, which again is really cool for both children and adults alike. So yes, it's definitely worth it if people that don't ski can get over the cold, or even though it's like a very dry cold, I think it's still beautiful for everyone.
Amazing. And in the summertime, let's talk about the activities and kind of the experiences that are available. Of course, hiking is such a big
Mhm.
draw. Everyone that I've had in the Dolomites in the summer, they're always wanting to go hiking.
Yep.
But there's even a full spectrum of hiking, right? Like I've had
Absolutely.
clients who are staying in one hotel and they're just kind of going on day trips.
Mhm.
Not day trips, but like just day hikes. And then
Yep.
others are actually going on like 5 nights,
Yeah.
overnight,
Hut to
progressive,
hut.
like changing hotels.
Yeah.
So there's even hiking in and of itself is there's a full spectrum of
Mhm.
how that might look for you.
Yes, absolutely. And I would say as long as people hike, there's hike levels for everyone. From the most intrepidous, like Antermoya hike that takes a minimum of 8 hours if you're skilled, but then you get to the top and it's literally, all for you because there's not a lot of people outside of the experts that do it, to the leisure like Vie del Pan, like hike that are more, you're not even going much up a hill. There's a lot of points that you can reach by car and park. So there's really hiking for everyone. And you're right, it could be done with one home base and kind of explore some of the nearby hikes, or perhaps, for the really intense, like people that want to do the full hikes, just like you can do a hut to hut skiing trip, you can do that for hiking. Of course, another really big outdoor activity in the summer is mountain biking. There's mountain
Oh.
biking and biking on the road. We have a lot of races that go on in that area, biking on the roads. Of course, for clients that don't want to bike, up giant hills, there's also the opportunity of doing that with e-bikes. But then also the mountain biking scene is huge. Again, multiple levels. So I think outdoors, the Dolomites are for people that love the outdoors, right? It's the outdoors. Food and wine is amazing. I wouldn't necessarily recommend it for somebody that like wants the like shopping and although the towns are very beautiful and there is a history to that. A lot of that history goes back to the war and kind of the division of the territory, and even the difference
Mhm.
between South Tyrol and the Trentino, which is the more of the Italian side. So yeah, outdoor enthusiasts, it's an amazing region with so much to do.
Talk to me about the food because I know that there's a lot of it's like the Dolomites is kind of a melting pot of a lot of like different
Yep.
history and cultures. So, what type of food can travelers look forward to in this region?
Absolutely. And you're going to have to stop me because otherwise I'll go off on the food forever. I always say, jokingly, I always say I don't really like the food in the north outside of Piemonte and the Dolomites area, which spans across 3 regions. But yeah, the food scene is amazing. Like probably you've heard of speck, which is kind of like the smoked version of the prosciutto that it's more common in the rest of Italy. That's a very popular thing to a lot of the times to combine with eggs and potatoes. They eat it a lot for like breakfast or lunch, like speck
Hmm.
potatoes and eggs. Then of course you have things like spezzo, like the pasta. You have canederli, which is that the Dolomites version of like bread balls. So instead of meatballs, or bread balls, and different places do it different, like with butter, with spinach. Some of them put meat in it. So lots of different variety on the food. Of course, you have apple strudel, lots of different types of sweets. And then on the drink side, you have, things like the lemon beer. And, you have amazing wine like Pinot Grigio, Pinot Nero. Of course, there's a lot of wineries around the Bolzano area, which a lot of the times is the entry point for people to come in before they go to Dolomite. So sometimes
Hmm.
if they want, to break up the experience, it's also worth spending a couple nights around that area and exploring more of the wine scene. They also have this amazing range of liqueurs. Like my favorite is Cirmolo, which is actually,
Okay.
it almost tastes like a grappa. It's made out of pine. So of course, everything in the Dolomites, like the wellness is so huge, and everything that comes from the forest is turned into a bath product, a liqueur. So lots of unique and particular things that you won't find in the rest of Italy.
I think you mentioned earlier that cooking classes were possible. What types of food items would travelers be learning how to make in a cooking class?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, a lot of them, it just depends on their interests because, especially, with us, we tend to do private experiences so that the experience can really be customized to the client's needs. But like I mentioned, Canederli is a really popular one because also, depending on the client's level of kind of culinary aptitude, we want to teach them something that it's easy to replicate right at home. So it's usually very fresh ingredients. So Canederli is very popular, apple strudel It's very popular as well for cooking classes. And then everything is customized, based on their needs. Those that want to make, pasta, I would say pizza is not a popular thing in that area. Of course, they make it, right? But it's not, you don't go there for pizza. Another big item that I forgot to mention is a buck or venison, right? Venison is also huge in that area. And cheese. Cheese is amazing. You have a lot of like slow food Presidium cheese. Like they have this puzzone cheese. Puzza means like stinky, like puzzone cheese of Moena, which is really famous all over the world. And it's only made in this one little town. So yeah, definitely for cheese lovers, one of those experiences is highly recommended.
Amazing. As your business picks up, the overwhelm sets in. You're juggling client calls, proposals, and bookings, and there never seems to be enough time. That's where the Hive comes in. It turns scattered notes and endless research into an organized expertise vault of hotel details, destination insights, and advisor experiences. That means you save hours, move faster, and streamline your workflow, so you can focus on the parts of your business that actually drive growth. Want to see how it works? Head to thehive.travel. You mentioned that Bolzano is kind of the entry point into the Dolomites, and that was kind of my next question, just because it is such a big region. So I have a map pulled up here that I'm going to share. Okay, so help me.
Yeah.
So here, I'll get rid of my little Dolomites pen. Maybe I can put in Bolzano just so we can see.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And there's really a couple of entry points, right? And it all depends on where people are coming from. Lots of people are coming from Venice. And a lot of the times, the closest place to get from Venice in the Dolomites is Cortina. You're about 2, maybe 2.5 hours from Cortina d'Ampezzo. If, of course, they're coming by train, then either Bolzano or Trento are the two kind of train entry points, and it all depends on where they're going within the Dolomites. If they're going to Val di Fassa, so Moena is one of the towns in the Val di Fassa, which I will mention for those that are looking for truly authentic experiences and a fraction of the cost of what they would find in Cortina and Ortisei. Val di Fassa is a really good option. Then I would recommend Trento as an entry point. And Trento is as beautiful of a medieval walled city as Bolzano is. So I know everything looks close on the map, but it's actually not when you're going over mountain passes. And one of the important things to tell client, I think it's also, a lot of clients think they just want to rent a car, they want to drive, and then they realize, oh my goodness, this mountain roads. And in the winter, I've got to put snow chain on the car, right? So it's always worth hyper localizing the experiences, unless they're doing like a hut to hut, valley to valley ski or hiking trip. Really picking one of the valleys and centralizing the experiences around it so that you're not spending most of your time in the car. Because often in times there's one road to get places. And if you get stuck in traffic, it's like being on the Amalfi Coast. So I would say the most, convenient entry points are either Venice, if they're driving, of course, Verona, right? Anything around that area, Venice, Verona, or if they're coming by train, Trento or Bolzano.
So you said to kind of pick one of the valleys. What are the main valleys that we're picking from in the Dolomites?
Yeah, absolutely. So you have the Cortina area, which it's its own thing, because in fact, Cortina, and Cortina is actually not part of the region of Trentino Alto Adige. Cortina is the region of Veneto, where Venice is. That's why it's like a lot of the times the closest spot to get to from Venice. Then you have Val di Fassa, Val Badia, which is also a really nice and diverse valley. And just to put in perspective, in Val di Fassa, like in Ortisei, you have hundreds of 5-star hotels. In Val di Fassa, because of how local and authentic it is, you only have one 5-star hotel in the whole valley, and the majority of them are 4 stars. Still very nice. A lot of them keep upgrading, but it's just the reality is that when we hear of Americans wanting to go to the Dolomites, they've heard of only Cortina and Ortisei. So depending on the vibe that they're going for and their budget, we try to kind of direct them to some of the other valleys. So there's 3. There's Cortina d'Ampezzo, there's Val di Fassa, there's Alta Badia, and then the 4th one is escaping me. Let me see.
Is this Ortisei here?
Yep.
Is this what you're...
It's right below. Yep.
Okay. So these areas, like when you say Cortina and Ortisei, they actually look close to each other, but I guess they're not.
I mean, they're a couple hours, right? They're not too far. They're kind of within the same area, but they are the two most popular areas. Like if you go to Ortisei and Cortina, you will be around 90% Americans. If you go to Alta
Okay.
Badia or Val di Fassa, if you encounter another American, you're lucky. It's funny, when we were just in Moena, which is the Val di Fassa, our hotel was hosting actually the US Olympic team for trials.
Oh,
So that was really, really cool that they picked that location rather than, some of the more popular
right.
ones.
So if I guess that must be a big part of the conversation with travel advisors and with travelers kind of at the beginning when they say they want to go to the Dolomites is deciding, are you looking for like these luxury hotels and that are in Cortina and Ortisei, or are you envisioning something a lot more authentic that would not have the luxury hotels? I mean, is that a big part of the early conversations?
I think so. And by the way, I just remember the name of the other valley, just a parenthesis. It's Val Gardena. And then you also
Oh,
have
yes.
Val Gardena, of course, which is a popular one as well. And then you have Valpusteria, which is, it's more off the beaten path. It's not quite as known. And of course, again, depending on also the level of skiing, right, that they're accustomed to, if they're used to skiing in Colorado, there may be valleys that are better than other. But I think you're absolutely right. That conversation on budget and kind of vibe that they're looking for has to happen early on. The authenticity, it's a huge part of that, because even though Ortisei and Cortina are beautiful, they are so packed that they've lost some of their charm, right? And so even when clients are so set on going to Taormina, and of course we love when people can spend more than 3 or 4 days, they can spend a whole week, so maybe they can explore two different valleys. We may put them like in a hotel that it's a 10-minute walk via trail to Cortina, so that at least at night there's no chaos, depending on season, and there's bars and all of that. So yeah, I think that a lot of our job is just educating people of what each place offers, and then based on what they're going for, right, recommending. In our experience, we have a lot of clients that combine maybe either Ortisei or Cortina. I wouldn't combine Ortisei or Cortina because you're getting exactly the same vibe, the same type of hotel, the same prices. But when they combine one with one of the more authentic one, of course, they always end up, loving the more authentic one. And the hotels, you can find nice hotels everywhere. It's just a matter of the price that you want to pay for them based on that location.
So that was my next question is, do a lot of people do kind of split stays in the Dolomites and actually include more than one stop? So
Yes,
talk to
absolutely.
me about, like if someone is coming and you're trying to figure out, are we looking for like the most well-known luxurious hotels, high price points? Are we looking for more authenticity? Are we maybe potentially going to do 2 stops? And I imagine if you're going to do 2 different hotels, you want at least 4 or 5 nights minimum to split
Oh,
that
at
up and
least.
actually
Right.
tell me more how you kind of think through that. And do clients often come knowing all of this? I imagine no. I don't have super knowledgeable. I don't have clients who are getting into the weeds. I feel like I'm generally the one leading this conversation to better understand what they're looking for.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. I think the conversation, just like you mentioned, the vibe, how touristy it is, it's logistics, because people look at a map and they're like, okay, I have 4 days. I want to go to Cortina. Then I want to go to Bolzano. I want to go to Lago di Braies, right? And then I want to go to the Lago di Carezza, not realizing how far everything is and that it would be worthwhile splitting the stays to localize the
Right.
experiences around those. But I would say that to do more than one destination, and we are grateful that we often have clients that are spending at least 1 week in the Dolomites, even 2 nights would feel too rush unless you have that specific focus of just going hut to hut hiking or hut to hut skiing. I would recommend at least 3 nights in each destination, except for maybe like again Bolzano. It's outside of the actual Dolomites park, so if you're coming through Bolzano, even spending 1 or 2 nights in Bolzano, you don't need the full 3 nights. It's a small town. You do one experience, right? And then you can get to the Dolomites. But once you get to the Dolomites, I would spend at least 3 nights in each destination. And then you have, beautiful towns like even Casterrotto, which is also another, because it's so close to Bolzano, it's like 45 minutes to an hour. You could even skip Bolzano and do, Alpe di Siusi area, which is that huge plateau that a lot of people know. Again, it's very popular during the busy months, but I think if it's planned strategically, especially
Hmm.
choosing the right accommodation based on what they're looking for, that conversation early will guarantee the success of the experience.
Hmm. What types of clients have you encountered that you actually feel like, I don't think the Dolomites are right for you?
That is actually a really wonderful question. We haven't had, like, usually by the times that clients come for the Dolomites, it ends up being a really good fit. I think it more applies to, again, they're in Venice and they're like, oh, I want to go 2 nights to the Dolomites. And we're like, guys, it's not really worth it, right? You're not get to
Hmm.
experience anything. So we've had to turn down more requests that were about velocity of just touching, all of those
Yeah.
points and maybe either saving it for another trip. And again, the mobility, it can be navigated. Of course, if you have a group of, maybe people, elderly people that just want to go for the views, it can be done. Cost, then it's a huge consideration, because even Alpe di Siusi, you can get up the plateau by car, right? But then you have to consider that cost of having a private driver the whole
Hmm.
time. So,
Hmm.
obviously for people that are not seeking, kind of the outdoors active, it wouldn't be the
Hmm.
best destination. But everybody that loves the mountains and the outdoors, and even if you do have a grandparent in the group, it can still be very worthwhile. Because another element that we haven't really touched on a lot is the wellness and the spa.
Hmm.
Almost every single hotel, even if you get a private chalet for your family, which is a really cool experience, they all have a spa. You can do like baths in the hay, like I was mentioning briefly early. That wellness component is huge, especially when you're doing all the sports and outdoor activities. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think it comes when it's not the right fit, it's usually because of speed, right? Or maybe it's a matter of budget, fitting in the budget within some of the other destinations that they're going to. Because once you get there, you really want to make it worthwhile your time.
So, I mean, in terms of coming to the Dolomites and enjoying the scenery and enjoying the views, is this possible without hiking? Like you mentioned, you could drive up to certain plateaus. Are there chairlifts or gondolas or like kind of scenic, like viewpoints that technically you could go enjoy and get there, not hiking?
Yes, absolutely. Like I was saying, there are driving, it's a big consideration. And, of course, walking, right? Hiking can be absolutely avoided. Avoiding walking will be a little bit tougher. But as we were mentioning earlier, there's a lot of flat, beautiful, scenic hike that are completely flat, right? Otherwise, you just get there by car to the viewpoint. You maybe plan a beautiful picnic experience. But of course, it's not going to be the same, right, as somebody who can hike, because viewpoints they're usually very crowded. Like you can get to
Hmm.
Seceda, right? We haven't even talked about Seceda, which is one of the most popular spot. And yes, it's a beautiful peak, but you had just as many other beautiful peaks. And Seceda has just become a tourist trap. Like the ticket to go up and down cost 50 euros and it keeps rising year after year. And you just take a chairlift up. There are people going up there. Even once you get up there and you get off the chairlift, you have to walk a little bit uphill even to get to kind of the closer to that peak view. And then if you want to walk around it to get to the better view, which is the Instagram shot that people see, it's a bit of a uphill hike. And you see people taking the chairlift wearing flip-flops. And I'm like, this is feels like Disneyland. And it's not Disneyland, right? People actually fall and slip and slide all the time because you are in the mountains. You are, at the mercy of Mother Nature. So I think that education and also sensitivity to like, hey, don't go up there, in flip-flops
Right.
just to say you did it, right? So yeah, lots to consider. It can be done, but I cannot say it's going to be the same exact experience as those that can get really off the beaten path through hiking or
Hmm.
skiing.
Talk to me more about the wellness component of the Dolomites.
Yeah, absolutely. what to say, there's thermal baths everywhere. There's also a couple of natural ones, but like I said, a lot of the hotels, that wellness component is a huge and integral part. They do this, like a lot of hotels do this off-gust ritual in their sauna, which is basically they take a lot of essential oils depending on what they specialize in, and they, usually there's a guy or a woman with a wet towel that dips it into the essential oils and then like just harshly slams it around, and you get all this like fragrance, all the different baths that you can do, from the mud to the hay that I mentioned earlier. Like the hay is used in a lot of things. There's also relaxation beds that are made out of hay. So I think when in the early conversation, when choosing the hotel and the chalet, talking about that downtime, availability of having that spa is really huge. And most people that go to the Dolomites, they are open to having that kind of experience. Something to keep in mind, and this is different when you go to the Trentino. The region is Trentino Alto Adige, but they are almost like culturally, they're two different regions. Trentino is the Italian side, and Alto Adige or South Tyrol is the German, like Austrian side. When you go to Trentino, you can usually get away with wearing a swimsuit in a spa. When you go to South Tyrol, usually it's naked spas, and of course you can, wear a towel around you. But if you wear a swimsuit, sometimes people will say something. So a little hack that I always do is like go, 15 minutes before it closes or right when it opens, hoping that nobody will see me. And, obviously they say it's all for hygiene, but it's just a cultural thing. And people really don't mind. Lots of German tourism there, lots of Italians. So, but it can be a cultural shock if you're not used to it. Even when getting
Right.
massages, again, the more you go to places like Cortina and Ortisei, the more accustomed they are to, Americans and the sensitivities that come to that. Otherwise, it's really worthwhile mentioning to the accommodation you're staying at, hey, if I get a massage, make sure that I'm, fully covered up, because otherwise you may get some surprises.
Is Are spa experiences usually happening at someone's hotel, or are they sometimes happening at like a separate location?
Great question. So usually it's at some hotels, and then you have like places like QC Terme, like QC Terme, which is a very popular chain where people can go and have and do the daily pass. Did you hear that?
Yes.
It's like a plane just flew over our head, like literally. And so, yes, most of the times it's at the hotel. But then if people are
Okay.
staying at a smaller chalet or a hotel that doesn't have as many amenities within the spa, almost everyone will have at least like a sauna and a Turkish bath. But otherwise,
Okay.
they will have discounts and nearby bigger places like Uci Terme.
So if spa is kind of a big part of what travelers are looking forward to and envisioning as part of their experience, that may also factor into deciding which hotel they stay at, and just kind of deciding,
Yeah.
not only do we want to be in a great location to hike and do all the
Yeah.
outdoorsy things, but also kind of considering the spa facilities at each place as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. And I would say that differently from other parts of Italy where spa is not as essential of an experience. And so a lot of the times, the bigger the hotel, the bigger the spa. That's not always the case in the Dolomites. Sometimes you get a 20-room hotel that has spa facilities of a 50-room hotel, just because of the priorities. And then you may get 50-room hotel that has smaller spa facilities. So obviously with somebody, with us, that we focus on boutique, very small family-owned properties, just know that the number of rooms doesn't always equal to the size of the spa.
So it seems like that might be a really important kind of detail to pay attention to, like right at the beginning of like if spa is, if part of this plan is to have a really nice spa day and we're looking for very specific spa facilities, to be looking at that as we plan the trip and as we select the hotels, as opposed
Right.
to it being kind of an afterthought.
Yeah. Yeah. And one more thought that maybe it's a little bit unsolicited. So forgive me for mentioning this. People really should pay attention to not just what the hotel website says, Dolomites, like Forestis, right? I have nothing against Forestis. It's a beautiful property if people want to go there and do nothing and hike around. but it's not in the Dolomites, right? It's not in the Dolomites. And so a lot of hotels that are kind of on that edge, they will say they're in the Dolomites. So sometimes, doing a little bit of research, because then they realize they got to drive an hour, right, to get to the actual UNESCO Dolomites area. So that's very important, because I think it's getting a little bit watered down with a lot of properties popping up and just say they're in the Dolomites when they're not. And I think
Okay.
that's very important to understand from the client. Do you really want to be within the Dolomites, or do you just want to be in the area and it's more about, the hotel?
Are you a travel advisor who's toured 3 or more hotels in one destination? Come share your insights on the podcast. Visit thehive.travel/podcast to fill out the interest form. So I think this is a really good point. What do you feel is like the key differentiating factor? So like if someone were to arrive at a hotel that says it's in the Dolomites, but it's not, is the disappointment generally related to wanting to go on a hike in the Dolomites and now I have to travel further? Or like what is generally like the specific point that brings the disappointment? You know what I mean?
Right.
I don't know if my question makes
Yeah,
sense.
it does.
I
It's
mean,
hard for,
it definitely sounds like something like you don't know until you get there, and it's
yeah,
like what is that feeling of like you get there and you're like,
yeah.
oh, this is not what I thought it was.
Right, absolutely. Yeah, it's hard for me to answer because obviously we haven't had that happen firsthand, because we're so upfront with the expectation, right? And we tell people exactly how it is. But like I said, I could only imagine, like, if I were to choose, I'm just thinking, a place like for Forestis, which is magical, the marketing they do, like something really for couples. If I was going there for maybe at the end of my stay, after I've skied, I've hiked, I just want 2 to 3 days of doing nothing. Maybe I'll
Mhm.
hike around, but most of my time is going to be spent using the beautiful hotel amenities. Then it's fine, right? But if people are getting there thinking, and obviously this will mean that they haven't mapped out their trip at all, right? That they want to go to Seceda, right, and stay at Foresis, or they want to go to Antermoia, which is accessible from Val di Fassa, and stay at Foresis. Yeah, that would be a pretty big disappointment. But again, the entry point to those kind of properties is so high that
Mhm.
most of those people usually are going through a travel advisor, like yourself, and kind of, really knowing what they're paying for before going for that price tag.
Right. I think you make a clear distinction that some of these, well, whether they say they're in the Dolomites and they're really not, is almost a separate topic from like these really high-end, well-known luxury
Hmm.
properties.
Hmm.
It almost like some of these properties are an experience in and of themselves.
Right.
And so you might not want to stay at a property like this and then plan to leave all day to go hike or to go mountain bike
Right.
or to go do whatever. It might actually be a better combination to stay somewhere else that's in the Dolomites that
Right.
you have direct access to, all of the hikes and whatnot, and then move to a hotel like this where the
Exactly.
full intention is just relax and enjoy the
Mhm.
experience.
Yes, 100%. Agree. 100% right. I would never recommend that hotel for somebody that wants to be out and about all day exploring the Dolomites. But for somebody that wants to have that kind of retreat, that's gonna absolutely be a perfect fit.
Okay, so talk to me about the client's general experience self-driving versus private drivers, because a lot of I understand that it's a bit complicated with all the mountain roads, and
Hmm.
also not all clients are really like looking for a private driver. Sometimes it's
Yeah.
a cost component, sometimes it's just not really the vibe or the style of trip that they're
Yep.
looking for. So do you facilitate trips with both styles of transportation, or do you definitely like recommend one over the other? Like how do you approach this detail?
Absolutely. Yeah. So, first of all, we do facilitate both, whether it's a rental car or a private driver. So, of course, that initial discussion on how comfortable, right? Have they driven in mountainous towns in Europe or Italy before, right? How comfortable are they driving after dark? A lot of the times, when even our clients have the rental car, right, everything is smooth until they have to drive after car and there's no lights on the street. So, they get a little bit uncomfortable. And of course, then if you're dealing with winter when there's snow, the moment they keep the roads pretty clean, but the moment you get off, I got stuck in the snow with a car to get to a property. So the moment you take the wrong turn and you end on a private path, right? And it
Yeah.
snowed the night before, they haven't cleared it out. So that conversation needs to happen up front and needs to be very clear. When we do work with clients that want their own rental car, first of all, they tend to favor like not in town properties because, of course, having to park your car every time, it's a huge consideration. If they do want to stay absolutely central, like when we just went to Moena, we picked a hotel that had its own parking facility. So obviously that makes things easier. Another thing to keep in mind is if you have a car and you plan on visiting the towns, a lot of those towns have limited traffic zones. It's called ZTL. You'll see a sign. And so a lot of clients will end up getting a ticket. We educate them. And usually, if they work with us, we're providing links to specific parking lots where they can park outside of the town. But I know sometimes that's stressful. There's traffic. They're trying to figure out where to go. So yeah, usually if you rent your own car, staying in a chalet or, like I said, an off the beaten path property is what they go for. And then the other consideration, which usually is a big factor when you have more than 3 people traveling, is their bags, right? Some people, obviously, most people are traveling with a check bag plus a carry on. So if you already have 4 people, even if you rent a large SUV, you're not going to fit 4 luggages and 4 carry ons and be comfortable. So then it begs the question, do we need to get either a van, which if people want an automatic van, that's harder to find. And it's usually 2 to 3 times more expensive than a manual van. Or do we take transfers for when we're checking in and out and then we get the car delivered? But by that point, depending on how long your trip is, you're spending more with the delivery of the car and, airport and in between hotel transfers than you would having transfers all the way through. So also depends on the experiences, right? If people are really into wine and drinking and we plan a lot of those activities, we don't feel really comfortable, especially now that the law in Italy has changed to where even a glass of wine will get you, in really big trouble if you get pulled over. We got to, really weigh the risk that they're running. But it can be done. We just had clients literally now that just left the Dolomites that did it and they did fine. They were, just a little bit scared at night. So I think just, again, setting that expectation early on and telling them exactly what kind of experience that's going to be and letting them choose. That's the best we can do, is just educate.
It's interesting being out at night in the winter definitely seems not great on roads that you don't know. But I guess it may also just be a consideration of like, if you want to self-drive, we probably want you at a hotel where you're having dinner at the hotel, or you are in town where you can like walk to a dinner nearby so that you're not
Right.
driving at night.
Right. So that's actually a really good point. In the winter, it gets dark at 4:30, right? So a lot of the times, obviously, you're leaving the ski lift right at 4, and maybe if you chose to ski in an area that it's more than 30 minutes away, here you are already in the dark, right? But other than that, I absolutely agree with you. Being in a town, or if you're in a chalet, planning dinner with private chefs on, days where you don't have something else planned, it's a good idea because, yeah, it gets dark so early that you're inevitably still going to be out and about a lot of the times at that time. So, yeah. And one thing worth mentioning is a lot of hotels in the Dolomites, they will do half board rates. In fact, most of them. It's very popular. It's not popular in other regions of Italy, but in the Dolomites area, it's very popular to do half board rate, which ends up being a fraction of the cost that if you were to eat 3 dinner just a la carte, once you get there. So that's something that we can share up front with the client, and that we often do for a couple of the meals.
And that's just also just more convenient, not having to kind of be out and about and just knowing that you can dine at the hotel itself.
Yeah. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
The only thing I can really think of that we haven't specifically talked about yet is families in the Dolomites. Mm-hmm. I know you said some of the walks and some of the hikes are totally flat and they're just really beautiful. What other considerations would you think about if a family wanted to come with younger children? And by younger, I just mean like not teenagers, I guess, like 10 or under kind of age.
Yeah, so our kids are 4 and 6, actually turning 6 this weekend. So there's lots to do in the Dolomites. Of course, in the winter, ski school, right? That's the most ski or snowboard school. That's the most popular thing to do, or private lessons or whatever it may be, right? Depending on how many of them that are traveling. That's something really fun for the kids. There's snow park so that after the ski lessons, they can enjoy the snow park. And in the summer, there's a lot of adventure parks. There's a lot of beautiful open air like malghe and chalets and agriturismi where you can enjoy a meal. They have playgrounds. The Dolomites, it's a very kid-friendly area. And when you see those people from Germany, people from Austria, you see those 4-year-olds that are just going down the mountain because they've been going there since the moment they could walk. So it's definitely a great place for kids, both in the summer and in the winter time. Of course, kids that have the ability to be active. So
Amazing. Karen, thank you so much for sharing all of these insights about the Dolomites. I don't know when I'm going to get there myself, but it is at the top of my list because, it just looks super beautiful and incredible, but also it's becoming more and more popular with clients as well.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and we'll do another FAM soon to that area. So we'll keep you posted with that. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited about sharing about this incredible region. So if you need anything, just let me know.
Thank you. Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Hive Mind podcast. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to subscribe so you never miss a new episode. And if you know a friend or colleague who would enjoy this, please share it with them. If you would like insights from this episode landing in your inbox each week, join our newsletter at thehive.travel/podcast. And remember, if you'd like to contribute to a future episode, whether it's sharing your destination expertise or your experience touring hotels, just head to thehive.travel/podcast to learn more and express your interest. We'd love to have you join the conversation. Until next time.